Good evening, lovers of literature. So we are back with another poem that we are going to critically analyze and of course go into the minute details of the poem. And we are of course going to read in between the lines. So today our author or poetess is Andreen Rich. She is one of the most acclaimed American poet, feminist, essayist, and of course a person who has worked to give voice to the lesbians out there. She felt that as if her teenage pangs of being a lesbian stretched its arms in her writings. So she is an individualist who thinks on her own and in her unique thought process. For her, as she says, responsibility to yourself means refusing to let others do your thinking, talking, and naming for you. It means learning to respect and use your own brains and instincts, hence grappling with hard work. So you can understand how hardworking, how meticulous, how original, how unique Andreen Rich must have been in her life. And of course she was one such brilliant writer. Today the poem that we are going to deal is The Trees by Andreen Rich. Before that we go into the poem, let me tell you, The Trees is a short, symbolic poem that focuses on the movement of the trees that are initially indoors. So the trees are indoors and they're trying to free themselves. They're trying to disentangle themselves from the four walls of a room. And they're trying to go to the forest. They're trying to escape, to have freedom in the forest. Now what do the trees represent? It represents nature, but also the nature of being. So as if the trees represent womanhood, it represents the nature of a woman. Whenever anyone is confined within the four walls, what happens? That person tries to seek refuge in a fully liberated sky. So that's what the trees are trying to do. So this poem talks about how the trees and basically the women are trying to disentangle themselves from the clutches. Now, this poem, and of course, the poet herself is very unusual. Her style is unique. She creates a unique niche of her own. So this poem is unusual because it's the speaker's attitude towards the trees. In the first two stanzas, there is a definite attachment. As the speaker objectively describes the escape of the trees to their new environment. And in the last two stanzas, the speaker, now a first person, now first she tries to objectify herself. She does not tell us that she herself is the tree. But when this first person I comes in, she tries to identify her woman's self with the trees. And that is how she wants to get back to her roots. That is the forest. She wants to ignore this profound shifting of the trees, but she paradoxically, by mentioning her own aloofness, brings the whole situation into sharper focus. So she tries to be aloof at first because She wants us to think. She wants us to ponder on the symbolic usage of this tree. And then we are suddenly brought into sharper focus. So let us get into the poem. This poem, let me tell you, is written in 1963 and it was published in a book, Necessities of Life. This poem appeared at an important point in Andrew Rich's development as a poet and cultural figurehead. In the same year, she moved to New York with a family, excuse me, and started to teach as well as throw herself into political activism, particularly anti-war protests. Years later, she became an ardent feminist and wrote many poems and essays reflecting strong political views and ideas. Now you have to understand this poem, Trees, is influenced by Robert Frost's poem, Birches. Yet it has its own distinct, quiet revolution going on. Mr. Frost's poem is quite alike, but with a little twist in it. But Birches is more of a poem where everything goes on in the psyche of the poetess. So now let us get into the poem. The first stanza says, the trees inside are moving out into the forest that was empty all these days, where no bird could sit, no insect hide, no sun bury its feet in shadow. The forest that was empty of all these nights will be full of trees by morning. So she tries to tell us that the trees inside are trying to move out. It of course gives us a kind of awe that what is happening? Why the trees are inside? Because now we have to ponder on and reflect on. So the trees inside are moving out into the forest. The struggle to free themselves have started. The forest was empty all these days. So we try to think how it would be that a forest was empty. How would an empty forest look like? And it also talks about how we torture, how we exploit nature. So nature and feminism has a close relationship for Andreen Rich. She says that no bird could sit on the trees because there were no trees at all. No insect could hide. No sun could even bury its feet in shadow. There was no shadow because it was all sun. It was all fairy. There was no softness of a woman. The forest that was empty all these nights. Even during the nights, the night could not feel the same because the forests weren't there. But she gives us a hope that it will be full of trees by morning. And now she gets into the close observation that what are the trees trying to do? She tells us, all night the roots work to disengage themselves from the cracks. So as if the roots are at work, they're trying to just dishevel everything. They're trying to get back to their own place. The place where they are in is not the correct place for them to be in. All night the roots work to disengage themselves from the cracks. In the veranda floor, The leaves train towards the glass, as if they understand that they need to break the glass. They need to break the shields to get back to the free sky. Small twigs, stiff with exertion, as if there is a continuous strife going on in the roots, in the small branches. It's like an inner turmoil that goes on into a person's psyche when that person is trapped and the person is taken away from its roots. Small twigs stiff with exhaustion, long cramped boughs shuffling under the roof as if they're trying to just free themselves. They're shuffling, they're trying to shuffle with place, they're trying to shuffle with the space. Like newly discharged patients. Now this is a simile. Such a beautiful simile, my goodness. Such a unique way of comparing why they are newly discharged patients. When you are just getting out of your sickness, your ailment, what do you feel? You feel that as if your new place, you are not accustomed to that. But actually that is your place. But you know not how that place is because you do not have that kind of freedom at that moment of time. What happens when a caged bird is just let out in the sky? You will see it flutters. It takes some time to get back to its original self. Why? Because it takes time for us to adjust to our freedom too. The more that we are imprisoned, the more that we are confined, confinement becomes our anthem. She tries to tell us that the women were so long subjugated under this domestic space that they've forgotten what real freedom tastes like. And when they're given real freedom, they feel like that as if they're not prepared for it. Feels they are like those newly discharged patients, half dazed, because they're not accustomed to see the light. They're not accustomed to see the full moon. They have just seen it through the shingles of their house, from the bars of their house. Half dazed, moving to the clinic doors. So as if they're trying to free themselves from their ailment. And what was their sickness? The sickness of not knowing what freedom is. Andrine Rich has always spoken for the feminine self. She tried to give wings to a woman. She being a woman, she being a lesbian. So these two stanzas speak more or less about this. It talks about the objective way the poetess is trying to understand the psyche of trees. She shows a kind of aloofness, as if she's trying to just keep a distance. It has of course a reason, because she tries to figure out what the trees are trying to do. But she very well understands what they're trying to do. Now comes from the third stanza, she tells us, I sit inside. Now I comes the first. I sit inside, doors open to the veranda, writing long letters in which I scarcely mention the departure of the forest from the house. So what is she doing at the moment? She's writing letters. And she is not mentioning that the trees have just departed from the house. She wants to keep it a secret. She wants to give the trees the freedom to enjoy the test of freedom without anyone knowing about it. The night is fresh. Why? Freshness of being free. The whole moon shines. The test of freedom. In a sky still open The sky is not bird. The smell of leaves and lichen. The smell is very important for a person who is trying to feel free. When you just sit within the four walls of a room and you hear the pitter-patter of the rain, it's different from you just standing in an open sky and quenching your thirst by the rain that is falling and just moistening your face, your hair, and your entire body. So there is of course a difference between the smell that you get when you are free and the smell that you get when you are confined. So that is why she says, the night is fresh, the whole moon shines, in a sky still open. Still open. Why still open? Because the sky was open, but they have not seen to it. They have not seen the open sky. Excuse me. The smell of leaves and lichen still reaches like a voice into the rooms. But though they were confined, my dear friends, the test of blood and test of freedom is the same. It still reached out to them like a voice into the rooms, as if they did not, even if they did not go out and test the smell, the sense of freedom, the smell itself came into the room, trying to tell them, trying to invoke in them the free spirit of themselves, of their being. Such a beautiful poem. My head is full of whispers, which tomorrow will be silent. Why? Because the strife of just trying to escape this confined space will be silent tomorrow, because tomorrow I'll be free, my dear. Listen, the glass is breaking. So they're trying to free themselves. The glass is breaking. The trees are stumbling forward. So the trees are moving forward. So that's a kind of newness to the poem. There comes a shift in the mood that was going on. So she tells all of a sudden, listen, the glass is breaking. The trees are stumbling forward into the night. Winds rush to meet them as if the winds are trying to greet her. Personification. Winds rush to meet them. The moon is broken like a mirror. Why? Because the moon is now not full. The moon can be seen through the boughs of the trees. So the moon is broken like a mirror. Its pieces flash now in the crown. Now you have to understand, the moon that was shining through the glass, the poetess is talking about that moon. The real moon is still there. So the moon that was getting reflected through the glass is broken. Why? Because they freed themselves from the glass. Their freedom walked out. Its pieces flash now in the crown of the tallest oak. So the tallest oak tree is dazzling with the moonlight. As I've told you, the poem Trees can be divided into two halves, right? The first two stanzas speak about the speaker being more objective in a way of looking into the psyche of the trees. And in the next two stanzas, she subjectively, with the first person I, brings a sharper focus into the whole situation. But paradoxically, she also tries to maintain a kind of aloofness. Why? Because she tries not to give us direct hint that she, her feminine self, is akin to a tree. So that is why she is very intelligent in portraying the kind of struggle she, being a feminist, has to go through. Now let us get into the figure of speeches. The use of simile is clear in the line like newly discharged patients heading for the clinic doors. Now this portrayal of the trees as people in need of medical help means the poem is symbolic. Why it is that the ailing patients have been compared to the trees? Because as if they were suffering. And what were they suffering from? They were suffering from being confined, not being able to enjoy freedom. Now, there comes an extended metaphor. The trees is an extended metaphor. What is an extended metaphor? When it is not just a metaphor concentrated in one line. It's an extended metaphor because it is a metaphor in thoughts, in ideas, in between the lines. That is why. The trees are indeed people. It's not just the trees are trees. Especially women who are in need of being healed. And how will they be healed? By breaking the shackles. Now they are ready for their true purpose. What is that? They are ready to renew the empty forest. That is the original locale. So this tree is a very, very mysterious kind of poem which demands several readings before the reader can fully grasp what is happening. If you just read the poem, just not understanding what is happening into the psyche, then of course you are not going to get it. There are certain lines that cause hesitation for the reader because there is a need of a natural break or pause which is known as caesura, C-A-E-S-U-R-A. That adds to a feeling of slight uneasiness which enhances the idea that the movement of the trees is anything but natural. It's natural because the trees need to go to the forest. But at first when it starts, there is a kind of uneasiness on the part of the readers. That why do the trees need to move out into the forest? The trees ought to be in the forest. So the trees are breaking of their interior, be it house, conservatory, greenhouse, covered veranda, the shifting away from the domestic confines and out into the forest. This is a highly significant change. Why so significant? Well, because trees normally make up the forest, isn't it? But here, quite contrary, the trees were empty for many days and nights. This is symbolic of certain types of people being left in the dark and not being able to see the light. And they do not know what their real identity is because they were suppressed throughout. Knowing the poet's feminist leanings and yearnings, it's safe to suggest that the forest is the forest of womanhood. The new forest will take shape very quickly overnight, says the speaker, pointing towards a sort of change, a sea change in identity, a collective identity. It is not just a tree, it's trees. It's not just one identity of one woman. He talks about identities, that is the collective identity. All of this action is taking place at night. The change is profound, of roots and all, the whole tree. entire imagery and the sense of physical movement in the second stanza, the auditory imagery, is grandiose. And the extra clue in line number 14, like newly discharged patients, surely suggests that the trees were sick or unhappy of their condition and they are in need of medical help and healing. And how will they heal? When they test the freedom outside. Third stanza, if you see minutely, introduces the speaker for real in first person. Here is a woman, the reader must presume, writing long letters to whom? And remaining aloof from the action of the tree. She is purposefully trying to remain aloof. She doesn't bother to mention the quiet revolution, or rather, she scarcely mentions it, which means she does acknowledge it. But is it that she is not that surprised by it? We as readers are surprised, but she tries to remain aloof to show us that it was bound to happen, it is happening. She has seen it coming perhaps because she has known it for quite some time. She knew it is going to happen. One day the trees would break out. As this exodus takes place, she can still smell the remains of the tree, like a voice that turns into whispers in her own heart, own head. The whispers are the last messages of her old life, because she is going to start a new life that is soon to be renewed. In the final stanza, the speaker exhorts the reader to listen. She says, listen. She wants attention. Why? Because the glass is breaking. See, it's a complete sure sign that this change is serious and permanent. There may be a damage done. What is the damage? That the glass is breaking apart. And then the imagery completely takes over. The poem becoming cinematic. Visual imagery becomes cinematic. As the moon, the symbol of femininity, emotion, and physical change, breaks like a mirror, another symbol of the reflected former self. Mirror was a reflection of a former self, and the moon is a symbol of a new self. The fragmented image lightening up the tallest tree, the tallest oak tree. Why fragmented image? Because she carries something of a past, but that is fragmented, that is not full. Why it is seen through the oak? Because that's the strongest, most durable of trees, which will give protection to other trees. That is why. So this poem ends on this note. I hope you have understood the poem, you have appreciated the poem, and as I say, of course you will read in between the lines. And let me tell you another thing for your convenience. Suppose this poem has two parts, right? Part 1 and part 2. And I will be putting the links of both the parts in the description box below, so that you don't have to search through for the other parts. Similarly, for other poems too, I will be doing that. So we will be again coming back very soon with another poem, and I give you a little hint on which poem it will be. Today I have talked about Andrien Riche's Trees being closely connected to another poem by Mr. Frost. So you understand, it's not a clue, it's a complete revelation of what I am going to come up with. So of course we are going to deal with Robert Frost's poem, but I'm not going to tell you which poem it will be. So we will see on the other side. Stay happy, stay safe, stay blessed, love literature, and read in between the lines. Thank you so much.